They won't be as frequent as earlier in the day, though, and the winds will be gradually easing here too. It will be a mostly dry end to the day for northeastern England, where only a few showers are likely. Skies will be largely clear here, but with a calm and cold night ahead. The sleet and snow showers will continue for a time across Scotland this evening, with some icy patches too, though things are going to turn drier overnight with a sharp frost. Still blustery with further showers across parts of Northern Ireland through the evening, though the winds here should quickly drop out. A few further spells of rain possible here overnight. The showers and winds will ease, turning things calm but cold overnight. And that's how the weather's looking.
On Mark Dolan tonight, we have a simple plan, which is to inform, stimulate and entertain in equal measure. It's all about getting your opinions on the national television airwaves. I love my viewer emails, mark@gbnews.uk. So do join me from 9 p.m. to midnight every Friday, Saturday and Sunday for big guests, big opinions and a big presenter. 6'5", don't you know? See you then on GB News.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome. This is GB News, online, on TV and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and for the next 2 hours, me and my panel, we're taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is former Liberal Democrat MP Lembit Opik and actor and writer Yanis Morgan. Before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon, it's 4 o'clock. I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom. Prince Charles says he is honoured by the Queen's decision to bestow his wife with the title Queen Consort when he takes the crown. As part of her Platinum Jubilee celebrations marking 70 years on the throne, Her Majesty says it's her sincere wish that Camilla receives the title. Meanwhile, a new photograph of the Queen working has been released to mark the milestone. The image, taken on Wednesday, shows the 95-year-old with her famous red box of government papers. She's the first British monarch to reach the milestone, and former royal correspondent at The Sun, Charles Ray, told GB News it's a huge turnaround for the Duchess of Cornwall.
Remember, this is a woman who at one time was the most hated woman in Britain and was regarded as a marriage wrecker, and famously the third person in a marriage which got terribly crowded.
Millie Dowler's killer Levi Belfield has admitted to the murders of Lynn Russell and her daughter Megan, according to a lawyer. Belfield has allegedly sent a 4-page letter detailing his involvement to the solicitor of the man currently imprisoned for the murders. Michael Stone's lawyer says it shows his client has suffered a miscarriage of justice. Lynn and Megan Russell were found bludgeoned to death in Kent in 1996. Belfield, who murdered schoolgirl Millie Dowler in 2002, is serving 2 whole life orders. The chairman of Tesco says food prices are likely to rise 5% by the spring. The supermarket chain says the impact it'll have on low-income families is troubling. It follows an announcement by energy regulator Ofgem that UK bills will rise by nearly £700 a year from April. Malcolm Grinston, research fellow at Imperial College, told GB News it's a difficult situation for both customers and energy companies.
I think we need to be very careful with these measures like price caps and like windfall taxes. In the very short term, they look okay, but if they end up meaning that the companies we rely on to invest so prices will come down in the future feel, why should we do that? We had years of making no money. Now we are starting to make money. It's going to be taken away from us. So why should we bother to invest? And I think at that stage, we may well find ourselves in a much worse situation.
American podcaster Joe Rogan has apologised for saying the N-word over a number of years. The podcaster says it's regretful and shameful after a video compilation emerged of him repeatedly using the racial slur. It follows musicians, including Neil Young, accusing Rogan's podcast, which is funded by Spotify, of spreading coronavirus misinformation. A number of high-profile artists have removed their music from the platform in protest. Patients awaiting major operations are to be supported by dedicated NHS care teams in a bid to prevent last-minute cancellations, which have been described as costly and frustrating. NHS England say people not being ready due to health problems account for a third of surgery appointments being delayed. The measures are due to come into force from April next year. Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries says the government is looking into new legislation that would hold streaming platforms accountable for offensive content. It's after Jimmy Carr came under fire for what many are calling an abhorrent Holocaust joke on his Netflix special. The comedian, who has not responded to the criticism, joked about the deaths of thousands of Romani people at the hands of the Nazis. Long-running soap opera Neighbours is being dropped by Channel 5, putting its future into doubt.
Everybody needs good neighbours.
The Australian-based show has been on screens for nearly 40 years and is more popular in the UK than its homeland. A spokesperson for Channel 5 says the show, which is reliant on British funding, will run until August. The daytime drama about the residents of Ramsay Street has launched the careers of many stars, including singer Kylie Minogue and Hollywood actress Margot Robbie. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now, though, let's get back to Nana.
Good afternoon. It's fast approaching 6 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, why do we all have to be punished for people who cannot control their eating habits? Look, I appreciate that there is an obesity epidemic and that it's partly caused by bad food. But be honest, nobody's forcing you to eat it. I mean, people often say to me, oh, it's all right for you because you're not fat. However, it is not an accident that I'm not overweight. I make time in my day to exercise and I educate myself about the foods that I'm eating and, more importantly, the quantities. I mean, I know plenty of people who are overweight who eat healthy food. The problem is they eat too much of it. When the sugar tax came along, most manufacturers didn't want to pay it, so they made up their sugar content with artificial sweeteners, most of which have a funny aftertaste, and some may even have neurological side effects which have not yet come to light. I prefer sugar, thank you very much. At least I know what that is. So the fact that Tesco have decided to create a few healthy food stores to clamp down on things that are high in fat, salt and sugar, and things that are below 100 calories sounds like a fabulous idea. I mean, the stores will have bays of low-calorie crisps and biscuits and other foods. seemingly to coincide with the legal ban on promotion of foods high in fat, salt and sugar. In Sainsbury's are apparently doing something similar. Ugh. Frankly, I'll be honest, I prefer sugar. Come on, let's be serious here. People who are overweight aren't going to want to be seen in these stores. And as an expert in fitness and a studier of nutrition, having run a business to get people fit and healthy for the past 10 years, I can tell you now that the reason why people are overweight is more to do with psychological factors, and if you solve those, then you're onto something. Most people who are fat are well aware that they're eating too much of the wrong things, and that a little bit of research on the internet, which we're all accustomed to doing, will tell them that. No one can seriously claim to be unaware that there is loads of sugar in many fizzy drinks and that too much cake will make you fat. I mean, if you are worried about the things that are in the food, like the other day when I munched through a packet of cheese and onion crisps, and to my horror, they contained sugar. I thought, what? That doesn't really make any sense. Then the manufacturers need to be held to account, not the supermarkets. Manufacturers need to stop bamboozling the customer with confusing food labels. I mean, for example, they'll tell you the fat, salt and sugar content for 100 grams when the thing you're about to eat in its entirety is 3 times the weight, leaving you to have to work it out, the overall calorie content yourself. And do you know that there are about 60 names for sugar? It's ridiculous. We are no longer tied to the EU. So how about coming down heavier on manufacturers? Obesity is the main underlying health condition in this country, and it's estimated that conditions relating to it cost the NHS over £6 billion a year. So if the government is truly serious about tackling it, then let's not leave it to market forces. So before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. Now, every Sunday at 5, I'm joined by a celebrity, a former MP, or someone who's had an extremely interesting career to take a look at the life after their job. Well, we'll talk highs, lows and the lessons learned and what comes next on the outside. And today, he was the first ever London mayor since the office was established and served in the post for 8 years until he was unseated by Boris Johnson. Yes, you guessed it, I'll be speaking to Ken Livingstone. He's coming in to talk to us. The Great British Debate this hour. Have the Conservatives abandoned their values? Now, some voters are not impressed with the rise in national insurance, sky-high government debt, or inflation being allowed to run high. This taxation strategy is arguably miles away from the traditional Thatcherite values and could be mistaken for a Labour manifesto. So I'm asking, have the Conservatives abandoned their values? And we'll take a look at what's making the headlines across the globe, including a strong statement from the former Vice President of the United States.
President Trump said I had the right to overturn the election.
That was Mike Pence, who served under Donald Trump. We'll discuss that and more with Foreign Affairs analyst James Marlowe before 5. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or why not tweet me at gbnews. Right, let's get started. Welcome again to my panel. Former Liberal Democrat MP Lembit Opik and actor and writer Yanis Morgan. Welcome both. Nice to see you. Great to see you. So firstly, let's talk food. Let's talk food. I mean, I'm going to start with you, Yanis. Haven't seen you for a while. Seen you the other day. Now, so Yanis, talk to me. What do you make of all of this? I mean, the government are looking and talking about not advertising fat and salt and high, sugar content products before 9 o'clock and all this sort of thing. What is your view, your overall view?
I think it's very hard to eat healthy. We go through fads. So there was a big thing a while ago trying to reduce fat. And all manufacturers did was then subsidise that with sugars. So it might have 0% fat, but the sugars were higher. And then everyone was like, wait, there's too many sugars here as well. I totally agree with your point. I think manufacturers need to be held account, so we kind of tackle it from the root. And also, if you go around a supermarket, what amazes me, they have a thing called power aisles. So when you're walking through the main aisles, the things that catch your eye the most, if you look at that, it is all chocolates,
yeah,
foods.
I love all that, though. What's wrong with it?
Why not subsidise it and try and have more promotions on foods that are healthier, so try and get the cost down on healthy supplements?
But you're a vegan, aren't you? How's that going?
Yeah, going well.
You went, well, does that mean you've eaten fish and some chicken recently?
All right, we have this debate.
I could hear it.
You've been rumbled.
I don't put a label on it because I might have the odd egg.
Okay, right.
You know, we've talked about this before, and I hate it when people are suddenly, if you say that you're a vegan, and they're like, but wait, you've had chocolate or something like this.
Well,
I try and eat healthy. I think the key is a balanced diet and what works for you, and I never preach to anyone what they should eat. But I do agree, just trying to find healthier alternatives. And the problem is, unhealthy food is addictive. It's designed to be addictive.
It's delicious.
But that's why, because they design it to be delicious.
With a nice warm glass of candy.
What do you think?
Really frightened.
Was it really? It was a little bit, don't worry, Lembit. So what do you think, Lembit, then? Because, I mean, you know, look, people are clever, they're intelligent, they know full well what's fat, what contains fat. Do you think that people who are overweight will want to stop even shop in these stores?
No, they won't. This is, in my view, patronising rubbish. It's the government thinking, if you can't see the thing, you'll forget about it. But that's not why people overeat. My mum was pretty big by the end because she got pleasure out of food. Her heart wasn't working well. She had to be very careful. She didn't really drink. She didn't smoke. So she ate a lot. And, you know, there was some solace in that. And she still made it to 81. The thing is, if you make it harder for her to get the food that she enjoyed, she'll still get it. She'll pay the extra. I notice whenever I make efforts to lose weight, it doesn't have to be horrible food. Soup is great. It's so tasty. Good old Heinz tomato soup. Who can not love that? And it's actually pretty good for you. I also noticed, and to some extent I agree with what you said, that when you're being very conscious of it, you tend to eat less meat. I just don't like it so much when I'm wanting to feel healthy. And the truth is, I feel most healthy when I'm eating healthy, because you are what you eat. But just this idea of banning the manufacturer or something, or blaming the advertising, that's just nonsense. I've discovered you can buy Tato cheese and onion, the best crisps in the world, from Northern Ireland, and you can get them imported to this country. I had a bad habit. I started buying them. It's my fault. It's not Tato's fault.
Yeah, you see, and there's all this government regulation and trying to sort of make people eat sort of slightly healthier and not advertise them before 9 o'clock and all this. And it's like, look, the world has changed. If people don't want to go to these supermarkets and these special aisles, and I did notice in the article that I was reading about it, they were saying low-calorie biscuits and crisps. I mean, look, if you're going to eat biscuits or crisps, if you're going to do that, I mean, really, these shops basically should be full of fruits then and vegetables and things like that. Yeah. If that's serious and they're honestly serious, then why on earth would they be making? I mean, to me, biscuits are just dust, constituted, stuck together dust.
Tasty dust.
Tasty dust at that.
But melon and yoghurt is tastier for me, and it's just a matter of changing your habits. But banning advertising and blaming manufacturers, that's a non-starter.
Well, education is the key.
But the manufacturers do actually owe a level of care as well, because they're very sneaky in terms of the way they classify sugar. So let's see how clever you are. There are apparently 60 different names for sugar. So I'm going to test your knowledge on whether it's sugar or not. I'll give you 3, and you need to tell me which one isn't sugar. Okay. So let's go. We're going to start with barley malt, fructose, and also tapioca rice sugar.
Well, so tapioca and barley. What was the middle one? The fructose. That's sugar.
Fructose definitely sugar.
The first one. What was the first one?
Barley malt.
Barley malt.
No.
We'll say no on that one.
You're going to say no? Well, in fact, barley malt is sugar. Yes, that is sugar. The one I made up was the tapioca rice sugar, which is nonsense.
That was a good make.
I made it up just now, actually, as it goes.
You're a fraud.
OK, let's try this next one then. OK, so we go. So we've got Maltese, or Maltose, I think it is, corn sweetener, or coconut syrup.
I would imagine that coconut syrup's probably the least bad of those.
I think you made that one up. But
which one?
The corn syrup. What was the coconut syrup? What was the middle one?
Corn sweetener.
And the other one?
Oh, we're looking at Maltese.
Oh, OK. I think the corn sweetener is a true thing.
Yeah, that is. But which one isn't sugar? Quickly.
The last one, the coconut syrup.
Coconut syrup. And finally, sorghum, oat syrup, or corn starch.
The first one, because I've never heard of it.
Sorghum.
Yeah.
No, in fact, cornstarch, I made that up myself, you see. But they put those labels on there, and the others were sugar, and you'll find that on the packaging. If you just tuned in, welcome on board. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online, and on digital radio. After the break, it's time for our Great British Debate. And this morning, I'm asking, have the Conservatives abandoned their values? With the rise in national insurance from April, inflation being allowed to run high, and the government debt sky high, government spending could be mistaken for a Labour manifesto. Arguably, it's miles away from the traditional facts-right values. So, what do you think? Have the Conservatives abandoned their values? Send us an email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Tweet us at GBNews. But first, let's get your latest weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking windy for many, with plenty of showers. These wintry in the north. Let's take a look at the details. The afternoon's cloud and damp weather in the southwest should be clear by this evening. It will still be blustery with some sharp showers around, but also breaks in the cloud. In the southeast, there should be a good deal of dry weather to end the day, with largely clear skies too. 1 or 2 showers perhaps. There will still be plenty of showers across Wales this evening, but these will be starting to ease. The strong winds will be easing too. Showers will still be lingering around the Midlands as we head into the evening. They won't be as frequent as earlier in the day though, and the winds will be gradually easing here too. It will be a mostly dry end to the day for northeastern England, where only a few showers are likely. Skies will be largely clear here, but with a calm and cold night ahead. The sleet and snow showers will continue for a time across Scotland this evening, with some icy patches too, though things are going to turn drier overnight with a sharp frost. Still blustery with further showers across parts of Northern Ireland through the evening, though the winds here should quickly drop out. A few further spells of rain is possible here overnight. The showers and winds will ease, turning things calm but cold overnight. And that's how the weather's looking.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's fast approaching 20 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now it's time for our Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, have the Conservative abandoned their values? Now you can also get involved with our poll, which is up on Twitter as well, asking you that very question. Now, a rise in the national insurance, a cost of living crisis, inflation allowed to run high and huge government debt, all things that you wouldn't expect from a traditional Tory government. It's led some Conservatives and voters to question whether the party has moved away from traditional Thatcherite values. The front page of the Sunday Express this morning is suggesting that Boris Johnson will pledge to warm the cockles of Tory hearts as he made a 3-point deal with the backbench MPs to try to secure their support for his leadership. It involves clearing out Number 10 staff and ditching lefty policies for traditional Tory ones, which includes tax cuts and streamlining government. The opposite of what's been had so far. So I'm asking, have the Conservatives abandoned their values? So let's discuss this with the traditional Thatcherite MP, Sir John Redwood. He's a Conservative MP for Woking, and he joins me now. John, thank you so much for joining me. So, John, in your eyes, if you could summarise traditional Tory values, what would you say they are?
Well, what we were doing with Margaret Thatcher when I was her main policy advisor was generating greater prosperity by lowering tax rates and promoting faster growth. We grew the cake more quickly, we allowed enterprise to flourish, and we got more revenue in from the lower tax rates than we were getting in from the higher tax rates. And that would be my number one recommendation to the Prime Minister and particularly to the Chancellor. Get rid of all these higher tax rates. You will slow the economy too much. You will actually collect less revenue. We need to go for growth, go for prosperity in the way that Margaret Thatcher did.
Because even if I look at that, I can see that if you restrict the amount of money that people have by taxing them on national insurance and, of course, making it difficult for companies to employ by taxing national insurance, even I can see that that doesn't sound that progressive in terms of getting people to spend and sort of stimulating the economy. But we have had an unprecedented 2 years where there appears to have been no choice, really, but for them to behave in this manner. Would you not see that as maybe the reason why they're behaving like that now?
Well, indeed, I backed them and the Bank of England in 2020. It was right to create a lot of extra money, something you don't normally get away with because it proves inflationary. Unfortunately, the Bank of England went on creating too much money last year as well, and so now we have a bit of a nasty inflation to get rid of. And I supported, along with all my colleagues, the very big handouts in 2020, because if you shut down a quarter or more of the economy and don't let people work, the government has to step up to the plate and offer alternative incomes to see them through. But you can't go on doing that, and what we now need is to see all those special expenditures washed out. I don't think we can afford this great big free test and trace anymore. The big costs of the vaccine programme should now be behind us. All the extraordinary costs of tackling COVID in our hospitals should be largely behind us. And so we now need to see a bit more discipline in public spending. We're getting quite a lot more monetary discipline from the Bank of England. Indeed, they may be lurching from too little to too much discipline. So again, I would urge the Chancellor to go for growth, get the tax rates down. Let's have a lot of import substitution. Let's get more of our own oil and gas out of the ground instead of importing it all. That's the way you get more better paid jobs, more tax revenues in Britain, and you're on the way to prosperity.
That sounds all well and good, and I hear you with all of that. But some of the new additions to the sort of Tory party in terms of the red ball seats, they'd probably like to see more government spending. So how do you see the Tory party sort of factoring that into their plans?
Well, I think they want to see more prosperity, and I think they would agree with me when I say that a lot of the prosperity that the red ball seats need and deserve will come from great enterprise success. They need the tax cuts, the promotion of enterprise, the import substitution, the government buying the good British products and services. Because if you look at what is different between a city or a town with a high average income in this country and one with a lower one, it is usually a much more vibrant and successful private sector that is the big divide. Yes, of course, we need to spend a bit on public infrastructure, and we need to spend a bit on improvements in some of the great towns and cities around the country. We will be. There's no absence of spending at the moment. But we do need to move on from the idea that you can buy prosperity with borrowing more public money. It never worked in the past. It's not going to work in the future. The way you get to prosperity is to encourage those thousands of extra new companies, to help the bigger companies expand, and above all, to create that British domestic market for great British goods and services.
So do you think that if Boris Johnson were to ditch some of these lefty, I mean, we've got net zero, if he was to ditch some of these things, do you think that he may well be able to save himself and that he could continue as the leader of the Conservative Party?
Yeah, I think he can indeed, and that's what I'm urging him to do. I think he made the first important step. I think the New Look team at Downing Street could do a much better job than the one that is just leaving. They made big mistakes, and he's paying a price for the mistakes they all made. I think the new team looks good, but we now need the policy change, and we need it urgently. We're going to have this huge hit to living standards and growth this April. Fuel prices through the roof, council tax up, national insurance imposed. He needs to scrap the big national taxes that they're proposing to put on. He needs to do more on energy prices. I think he needs to get rid of VAT on fuel, at least for the time being. He needs to promote more British fuel coming out of the North Sea in particular. and we then start to be on the road to prosperity again.
Let's see if he'll do it. Listen, it's been really good to talk to you. Thank you for your thoughts. That's Sir John Redwood, MP for Wokingham. Thank you very much. So, what do you think then? Well, you've heard what Sir John Redwood said. Do you think that Boris could actually survive, and do you think that they've lost their way? I'm also joined by former Labour MP and former Minister of State for Europe, Dennis MacShane. Dennis, thank you so much for joining me in the studio. Good to see you. So, Dennis, you heard what Sir John Redwood said.
Fascinating.
What do you think?
Well, I was absolutely fascinated. I mean, John and I are about the same generation. When he started talking about import substitution, I went, my God, that's Tony Benn language. That's Jeremy Corbyn language. That's the old-fashioned protectionism. I know we've shut our frontiers to Europe, but we're really going to move in the direction of Albania and have only British-made goods and no other foreign imports. And then I remember John, of course, standing against John Major in 1996. He broke apart the Conservative Party. But for me, this era is a bit like the 1970s. Before you were born, I'm afraid.
I'm afraid I was born in 71, but thank you for that.
Well, there's a guy called Ted Heath who was Prime Minister. He went to Balliol, Oxford, and was President of the Union, just like our present Prime Minister.
Right.
And he went for dashes for growth, and he was veering left, he was veering right. You all got seasick, even I as a Labour guy did then. And I think the present government's like that. They don't know what to do. They're panicking. They wasted £8 billion on dodgy PPE contracts because they had no grip. They were splaffing money around like it was going out of, you couldn't create enough. And now we've got all this money washing into the system. Other countries, France has just said maximum rise in energy bills, 4%. The electricity, the energy companies don't like it. Tough. Their shares are going to take a hit. Tough. I am talking about President Macron now. Moi, je vais défendre. I am going to defend the French energy consumer. Here, Sunak, who's the richest, his family wealth.
Well, he's a billionaire, isn't he?
His family wealth is greater than that of the Queen.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the faintest idea how ordinary people live. And they're, when the hits come in, I think the political price they'll pay will be very hard. But
the thing is, though, and you said they're spaffing money about, but that would have been something that people would have thought of the Labour Party.
Exactly.
So if this is not a compliment really to the Labour Party at all, is it, really, in that respect? So if they're behaving like the Labour Party, I think people are scared.
Well, they're behaving like what I call the stupid Labour Party. And I'm sorry, I've written a book called Must Labour Always Lose? It tries to explain why since 1966, we've only won in 4 years since then.
That's right.
74, 97, 2001, 2005. We're just now into the 12th year of opposition because we get policies wrong. I think we're beginning to get some grip, but it's very, very difficult. And I don't think with all this present turmoil in the Labour Party, they have the faintest idea which way to turn. I feel sorry for Boris Johnson. When the good fairies blessed him in the cradle, they gave him charm and make us all laugh and lots of girlfriends and everything. But serious national management, no. He's got Brexit done.
Which was pretty tough, right?
No, it was very easy to do. We'd already decided.
Theresa May didn't manage it. She kept walking back and forth.
Theresa May didn't manage it. I mean, she's like an England football manager. She was never going to manage it. Boris simply gave in to the European Union, gave them what Michel Barnier wanted. I know Barnier, he described it to me. He sold out Northern Ireland. I'm using their terminology. I mean, the DUP are right, but then they shouldn't have backed Brexit in the first place. And now we've got all the trouble over there. And now it's blowing up in his face because what Brexit does, it's knocking off about 1% of GDP every year. And a poor country doesn't have the tax base, the tax revenue. We've just had the French government's reporting, I think it's 8,000 French high-wage earners, high taxpayers going back to France, 200,000 in the overall Europeans, high-wage earners in the last year or two. If we send away all those guys, men and women who pay high taxes, rent high flats, spend money.
But people would argue that actually want to pay the people within this country who live here those wages rather than continuing at this sort of, as I think it was Rishi Sunak who said, that we're drunk on foreign workforces. And I know he probably meant that for a sort of different workforce, but also I think at the top end of the workforce as well. We should really be trying to invest in the people in this country. But I want to touch on Mrs Thatcher, actually, because I'm wondering, do you think that she would have supported this as a national insurance, the whole rise of national insurance?
Well, I've been thinking about that since GB News kindly phoned me up this morning. Don't forget, she did cut the highest rate on the super rich in Britain. In exchange, she imposed the highest ever VAT increase hike, which really hits the poor, because if you buy a car and you're on $500,000 a year, increasing by 10% the tax of the car, you don't notice it. But if you're on £10,000 a year, it really hurts. So there was an awful lot. In South Yorkshire, average incomes went down by 25% in that period. They're all miners and steelworkers, kind of people, forgive me, somebody like John Redwood or Rishi Sunak, who was a very well-paid foreign worker in America. He wasn't complaining about being a foreign worker there. Don't really understand. It's a sort of Goldman Sachs view of how Britain should be run. It's very, very tricky. I think I'm astonished at some of the things that Boris Johnson is announcing, because they come, for me, and I've been around a long time, out of the old socialist playbook.
So they seem to be... So would you say then the word that they are deserting their Tory values?
They are, I think, also because there's a huge just epochal generational divide. 40 years after 1945, it was all mixed economy, trade union rights, investment in the public sector, regional policy, like somebody was mentioning just before 4 o'clock on this programme. That went out the window. Or in many countries after 1980, it was Thatcherism, it was Reaganism, it was get rich, it was investments, it was unearned income. Not against it. I'm happy the value of my house has gone up, leave it to my children. But that's run out of steam as well. And so we've got to find our way to a new social economic paradigm. I agree with John Redwood, support growth, but intelligent growth, regionally based growth, support the right of unions to negotiate better wages for workers, tell Sir Andrew Bailey, the Governor of the Bank of England, to stay in his box.
And also cut down his salary, $500,000. Honestly, the cheek of it. Listen, Dennis, we've got to head to the headlines, but I do appreciate you coming in to talk to me.
Huge pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
That's Dennis MacShane, former Minister of State for Europe and a former Labour MP. Wow, so much going on. Coming up is the Great British Debate, and in this debate I'm asking, have the Conservatives abandoned their values? Let's take a quick look at what you've been saying. Susie says, no, they never had any. Very good. Chris says, in the case of the online harms bill, yes, they have. They're putting speech control in the hands of elites, media moguls and the establishment. And Tom says, Conservatives don't value anything other than money. They exist to the interests and investments by the rich elite. OK, so have they or haven't they lost their values? Keep coming. Keep those texts in there. Right, you're with me, Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come, we'll continue the Great British Debate. I'm asking, have the Conservatives abandoned their values with a rise in national insurance from April, inflation being allowed to run high and government sky-high debt? Are we a world away from the traditional Tory values? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, former Liberal Democrat MP Lembit Opik, and also writer and actor Yanis Morgan. First, let's keep you up to date with the latest news headlines.
It's 4:34. I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom. The Queen says it's her sincere wish that Camilla, Duchess of Cornwall, becomes Queen Consort when Prince Charles becomes king. Clarence House says the pair are touched and honoured by the gesture. Her Majesty made the announcement in her Platinum Jubilee message as she became the first monarch in British history to reach the milestone of 70 years on the throne. Millie Dowler's killer, Levi Belfield, has admitted to the murders of Lynn Russell and her daughter Meghan, according to a lawyer. Belfield has allegedly sent a 4-page letter detailing his involvement in the killings to the solicitor of the man currently in prison for the murders. Michael Stone's lawyer says the admission shows his client has suffered a miscarriage of justice. Lynn and Meghan Russell were found murdered in Kent in 1996. The chairman of Tesco says food prices are likely to rise 5% by the spring. The supermarket chain says the impact it will have on low-income families is troubling. It follows an announcement by energy regulator Ofgem that UK bills will rise by nearly £700 a year from April. Long-running soap opera Neighbours is being dropped by Channel 5, putting its future in doubt. The Australian-based show has been on screens for nearly 40 years and is more popular in the UK than in its homeland. A spokesperson for Channel 5 says the show, which is reliant on British funding, will run on the channel until August. You're up to date, and this is GB News on TV, online and DAB+ radio. Next, it's Nana.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
39 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now back to the Great British debate this hour. The front page of the Sunday Express today is suggesting that Boris Johnson will pledge to warm the cockles of Tory hearts as he looks at ditching the so-called lefty policies for traditional Tory ones, including tax cuts and streamlining government. It's a gear change from what we've seen from the Conservative government so far, with a national insurance rise, a cost of living crisis, inflation allowed to run high, and huge government debt, all things that you wouldn't actually expect from a traditional Tory government. So I'm asking, have the Conservatives abandoned their values? Let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by actor and writer Yanis Morgan and former Liberal Democrat MP Lembit Opik. Well, Lembit. And biscuit,
right,
sorry.
Oh,
couldn't resist. Now, you're a former MP. What do you think?
Yeah, they have. But I think that the mainstream don't follow what Boris has been doing, which leads on to the question, which we might come back to, where do these ideas come from? But I've said here in this studio before, the Conservatives aren't going to win more than a handful of votes by, for example, their environmental policies. And let's put it on the table. The energy crisis we've got is because of the green agenda. That's not a Tory agenda. No one elected the green policy.
Well, it isn't fully, though, because the price of wholesale energy has gone up across the world, actually. So there is that.
Yeah, but there's demand and supply here. Take the example. We've got £1 trillion worth of gas under our feet, but we won't extract it because apparently it's a bad thing to do. In fact, Richard Tice said something about that recently, yesterday, I think, here in the studio. So in short, yeah, they need to get a realistic policy on environment. Then you've talked about tax, and Dennis MacShane inferred, very interesting fellow actually, I was in Parliament with him, that we've essentially got the most socialist government in British history. That doesn't sit well. You heard with Conservatives, you heard what John Redwood said, reduce tax, increase growth. Now, you can argue whether that's true or not, but that's what the Tories want. And if Boris carries on down this path, though, as you know, I don't think his position is survivable anyway now. But if he carries on this path, not only has he got all the Partygate stuff, but he's also diverted so far from the Tory agenda that you might as well have him as leader of the Labour Party. He'd probably do a better job, actually.
Well, he'd probably be voted in, actually, because there's not really much competition right now. What do you think, Yanis?
I totally agree. It was actually interesting hearing you talking with Dennis and Lembit. We were discussing this, actually, in the green room. By the way, you need to release a memoir. But Lembit was telling me about his time meeting Margaret Thatcher. I know that was mentioned before. It's very interesting. Anyway, no, back to the point. Going to core values, I think that bringing tax down, getting the economy moving, they have definitely moved away. But leaving that aside, I think the Tories have values in general. Forget Tory values. Where are their values? Look at what's going on. Look at the figurehead. And this is a distraction. They're saying this. It makes a great soundbite in the media. But it's to distract from the fact the values of the leader, Boris Johnson, in general, I think a lot's lacking.
Yeah, but we're not talking about that. And actually, should you be determined on your values or should you be determined on what you actually do in government? And to be honest, for me personally, I'd be looking at what they're actually doing, and I don't like what they're doing. I'm not that interested in his moral compass, because some of them, if you look at all of them, they're all up to something, and I don't want to know. I want to know how they're going to run the country. But I just want to pick up on something that you said, because you're talking about the Conservative Party and everything, and you're saying that, yes, they're losing their way, you're looking at their values. But what about the fact that we have had a pandemic? Which government would have done anything differently?
Well, actually, that was a point I was going to raise, because they are living in unprecedented times. So the pandemic, I think, has engineered them needing to try and find money from somewhere, and hence a lot of the policies that are released at the moment. But in saying that, and just going back to what you were saying about you want to see a government, what are their actions? What are their actions? Look at the government, look at the economy, look at the country. There are people... I was driving in today and there was someone saying that he couldn't turn on his heating. He's an old man, pensioner, and he's actually living in his coat. You know, there are real problems at the moment in the country.
And this is the core problem here. You can say it's not about personalities. It is about personalities.
Well, no, I said morals. It's not about morals.
Okay.
I'm not interested in the morals.
Well, OK, then on the morals, a lot of people feel differently because...
Well, I appreciate that.
They've got a lot invested in the fact that they couldn't go to their mum's funeral, but Boris Johnson was partying. That's a problem.
Yeah, but that wouldn't... I know that, but I hear that, and I sympathise for anybody who lost someone during the pandemic. But that doesn't really change what they did, OK? So having a party, you could still have a party, but the reason why they didn't go to a funeral was because of the high numbers of people that you would mix with from all regions, which could then mean that you yourself could be the next one. You don't want to be that. Yeah. So I think that's it. So let's talk about...
But you're missing the point. I think that's rude. I think the point is, that's probably a better way of saying it, Boris is only talking about this because he's sinking, because he's drowning. And that's why he's talking about it. If Boris didn't have Partygate, he'd just be carrying on his own sweet way without any of this, and they'd say, the party would be moaning and say, oh, yeah, but he's an electoral asset. He's only been brought to the negotiating table with his own party because he's got such a big mess in his own backyard.
Well, is that a bad thing, though? OK, so he's created this mess. He's now lost the real negotiating power, and now he has to do what we want, which is why they voted in the first instance. Why is that a bad thing?
No, it's weak leaders are better for that reason.
Well, exactly.
It has to become more democratic. I totally agree with you on that. I mean, I'm actually not making party political points because I like Boris as a person and hope that don't come across as if I'm wishing him ill. I just don't think this is authentic. He's thrashing about trying to find a way to get the Tory party to come back behind him. He might succeed on that, even if I don't think it's going to save his skin in terms of being Prime Minister. But it does show how far we've gone away from the original Tory agenda.
I think a lot of the mistakes, you look during the pandemic, a lot of money wasted on PPI. We were discussing this. 8 million on PPI that can be used, another 12 million on fraudsters for it. Billion. So when you look at that, 12 billion, and now they're trying to have to reclaim the money. So that is the government mistakes, and they're having to change their core values to counteract what's happened in the past.
I don't know. I think that they have wasted a lot of money. I mean, you mentioned the PPE that they wasted on, didn't they? They wasted money on all sorts of things. They track and trace. I mean, we can't track and trace that money. They're able to make it. Apparently, it was 2 years. The 37 billion was over 2 years, but we haven't had the full 2 years, so there must be some left over. They gave some contracts to loan schemes. That was ridiculous, wasn't it? They gave loans to companies that apparently not even registered on Companies House, so people are not paying that back. And also the waste within the NHS that nobody seems to be talking about, and we're looking at now. They're trying to recoup the money from us, and I actually think we need to start looking at some of that too.
Yes,
perhaps
100%.
Perhaps counterintuitively, I'm actually more sympathetic to those incompetences because I really don't think the Labour Party would have done any better.
Well, exactly.
The bigger issue I've got is that let me take a step back there. I think narrative is everything in politics. What you believe in, however well or badly you do it. Jeremy Corbyn had a clear narrative. Arguably, Bill Clinton had a clear narrative. Putin, whether you like it or not, he's got a clear narrative. Thatcher certainly did. Boris seems to drift. What does he actually stand for? How can he be obsessed with the Green movement one moment and then he says, well, I'm going to go back to Tory values? How can he say, oh, I'm going to warm the cockles of your hearts, which must mean tax cuts for most Conservatives, and then not do it? Well, maybe he will, but I don't see the evidence at the moment.
No, well, I mean, him and Rishi, and I also respect what Dennis was saying, that Rishi Sunak is a billionaire. He is not really relatable to most of the people on the street here, which is probably why he came up with that nonsense idea of giving people £150 off their council tax, which doesn't make any sense, because most people he was trying to help don't pay council tax. And then the £200, which is a loan, and this is going to kick in October. However, that is when the price cap goes for the price of gas. So that'll be a zero. That'll be a zero in itself, right? But the show is nothing without you, of course. So why don't you join us? Let's welcome our great British voices, and this is your opportunity to be on the show. Tell us what you really think about the topics we're discussing. Jonathan Jones is the managing director of Trading Tregathon Tea. Have I said that right this time?
Well done, man. Very good now, yeah. And I think you're right. The government seems to have got into a bit of a muddle. I'm not sure if it's lost its way completely. They've just come out of this COVID predicament, and that would confuse any government, as you've just heard. But I think last week I was up in Grantham at a tea tasting, and as you know, that's the sort of Thatcher stronghold. And people said to me there about this sort of stuff. They think that there is definitely a need for low taxes, and this weird thing about high tax is, I'm not sure where that's come from, and that's confusing to their core voters. And I think they were talking about the Ben Hoochin, I think it is, the mayor up in Teesside, how he's sort of gone almost a bit rogue, it seems, to those counties up there, and they want a bit more of that. And being based here in Cornwall, we're not actually a soft southerner county, which is kind of where a lot of these problems seem to have come from, pandering to this sort of metropolitan elite, as they call themselves. And, Cornwall identifies much more with those other counties, which are really the reason why Boris is in power. And we're not taken in by all this free money. At the end of the day, these people are real. They understand we have to have low taxes, successful businesses. And, if it weren't for counties like Cornwall with all MPs are Tory down here, that's amazing. So, when Boris rises up at to a panic, when there's a crisis, he comes good. And he was down here for the G7 making big noise, with all the leaders. And we thought he was great, and he can do it. I think cometh the hour, cometh the man. He's just a crisis control man. He's not really very good at managing stuff. So come the next crisis, we'll be glad he's there, I think.
Well, Jonathan, great thoughts. Thank you for them. That's Jonathan Jones. He's there in Cornwall. Gosh, what do you think today? I'm asking you, have the Conservatives abandoned their value? And lots of you have been getting in touch. Tony says, we need new leadership and a new direction. PM Rishi Sunak is the way forward. Really, that's interesting, is it, do you think? Darryl says, absolutely, and this government is definitely ideologically left-wing. Tim says, no, they haven't. I think they're right that Thatcher would have supported the national insurance rise. It's fiscally responsible. Margaret says they have no idea what they're doing. This is what you get when you put someone like Boris in charge. Robert says they haven't abandoned their values. They just had to spend the money to get themselves out of the pandemic crisis. And there's also right now a poll up today on Twitter throughout the show asking you the question whether you think the Conservatives have abandoned their values. And currently, 80% of you say yes, they have. Well, there you go. Well, you're with me. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. If you've just tuned in, where have you been? We're online on TV and on digital radio. After the break, we'll take a look at what's making the headlines across the globe, including a strong statement from the former Vice President of the United States.
President Trump said I had the right to overturn the election.
That was Mike Pence, who served under Donald Trump. We'll discuss that and more with Foreign Affairs analyst James Marlowe next. But first, it's the weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking windy for many, with plenty of showers. These wintry in the north. Let's take a look at the details. The afternoon's cloud and damp weather in the southwest should be clear by this evening. It will still be blustery with some sharp showers around, but also breaks in the cloud. In the southeast, there should be a good deal of dry weather to end the day, with largely clear skies too. 1 or 2 showers, perhaps. There will still be plenty of showers across Wales this evening, but these will be starting to ease. The strong winds will be easing too. Showers will still be lingering around the Midlands as we head into the evening. They won't be as frequent as earlier in the day, though, and the winds will be gradually easing here too. It will be a mostly dry end to the day for northeastern England, where only a few showers are likely. Skies will be largely clear here, but with a calm and cold night ahead. The sleet and snow showers will continue for a time across Scotland this evening, with some icy patches too, though things are going to turn drier overnight with a sharp frost. Still blustery with further showers across parts of Northern Ireland through the evening, though the winds here should quickly drop out. A few further spells of rain is possible here overnight. The showers and winds will ease, turning things calm but cold overnight. And that's how the weather's looking.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's 6 minutes to 5 o'clock. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, on radio and online. So it's time for the part of the show where we look at some of the things that are making the headlines across the globe. Still to come, of course, Ken Livingstone will be in the studio where we'll have a good chat about what's been going on with him on the outside. But of course, right now on the agenda for today in terms of global events, former Vice President Mike Pence, a sit-out at Donald Trump. But first, we're going to start with the tensions that continue between Russia and Ukraine. US officials believe Russia has assembled 70% of its military capability needed for a full-scale invasion of Ukraine over the next few weeks. And Russia is said to have more than 100,000 troops near Ukraine's borders, but denies that it's planning to attack. So I'm joined by Foreign Affairs analyst James Marlowe. James, what is the latest? Can you update us on what is going on?
It is believed to be about 135,000 Russian troops now on or near the Ukrainian border. The Polish people are said to be very ecstatic, very happy indeed. Why? Because the American troops have landed on the border with Poland and Ukraine. The Polish people are saying, right, this will show Putin that we mean business. We, being the former Eastern European countries, Romania, Hungary, what was known as Czechoslovakia, Bulgaria, let's see now, East Germany and Austria. There was a number of countries that have experienced what it's like to be under the realms of the Soviet Union. Now, in response, the Russian troops, as I said, have moved up to around 130,000. They're on the border with Belarus. So that's the southern border, which is right on the Ukrainian border. And a report came out yesterday in the Financial Times citing US intelligence sources that Putin, in response to the Americans landing these troops, around 3,000, just over 3,000, will now move back. He has yearly nuclear training exercises around the autumn time, which is September, October. He's now planning to move that back to later this month or March to show a real source of force against NATO and the West. Now, we know that that's not going to happen before February the 20th now. Why? Because Putin is not going to embarrass the Chinese. The Chinese, of course, are holding the Winter Olympics. They finish on February the 20th. The week after is President Biden's State of the Union speech. That could be an ideal time to do it. Or alternatively, perhaps Putin is just thinking, I can continue this war games. I've got patience for the next few months and just to see how it realms out. But nevertheless, these troops are on or near the Ukrainian border and the Ukrainian people are feeling it, although things are still running normal. And I can see that there is a possibility that the Russian forces would make an incursion into the southern area of Ukraine and the Donbas region, Donetsk and those places, and just fill up and support the Russian insurgency over there.
Well, listen, here's what's coming up later on Free Speech Nation. GB.
Someone like Ricky Gervais in this country, he says whatever he wants and he doesn't care about because he can't be cancelled.
I still think that even he toes the line a little bit. He thinks about it. I mean, I do think he considers it. You have to, you know, because the weird thing is, like for me, like what I feel about what's happening right now. I mean, I feel like I could talk about it on stage because I'm established, but I also think, like, you know, if you're partners with the biggest streaming service in the world, and then if you also, you know, you're doing a commercial for this international company, and so you have to think, you know what, how much do I really want to rock the boat? And as a comedian, it's your job. You know, the best description, Ralph Gleason, who was a terrific writer, talked about Lenny Bruce in a seminal book about Lenny Bruce. And he said that Lenny was the pearl in the oyster. Yeah. And Lenny Bruce, the great American comedian. And so the oyster is a beautiful thing that's created. So the oyster is the society, and it creates this beautiful thing, a pearl, that Lenny Bruce. But the pearl is attacking the oyster. Yeah. So, and it has to cover it, and hopefully it just goes away. And it's this beautiful thing. So I do think that sometimes I think people forget that this is supposed to be an irritant. You are supposed to, as a comedian, you're supposed to be controversial. You're supposed to take the other side. You're supposed to get the audience to question their foundational thinking.
That ability to look away and let things be is a sign of maturity. And behind closed doors, and this is what the racism of law expectations is about, is with those Muslims, they're just not there yet. That's really what it boils down to.
That's a really interesting point as far as that. Is it this expectation that Muslims are likely to react violently if they're upset? That's a very patronising
because the Christians used to do that in the past. They're over it now. Right. They're old enough, they're mature enough, they're adults. But the expectation that a Muslim who expects to be offended. Yes. So the assumption is, if you're a Muslim, a drawing of the Prophet Muhammad, whether it's flattering or not, is going to offend you. Can you look away?
Well, it's not necessarily true that all Muslims would be offended.
Well, first of all, it's not true. Yeah. That's again why I think it's a form of racism, and it's a form of, in itself, if you want to pursue the notion of Islamophobia, yes. It is actually a form of phobia. First of all, it's not true. It applies to a minority. Yes. But the assumption is they can't deal with it. The Christians can, the Jews can, maybe the Buddhists and the Sikh can. Yes. But the Muslims, they can't deal with it. They're just going to erupt in a violent rage.
Hi, I'm Alistair Stewart, and I really hope that you can join me here on GB News. I've been in this game for 40 years and I've made lots of friends. I try and reflect what they think about the big stories of the day in conversation with me. That's why we call it Alistair Stewart and Friends. And you're a key part of it as well. I always get inundated with emails and messages and texts. And if they're really good, I play them back to you. 12 till 3 every Saturday and Sunday.
Join me, Mark White, here on GB News. For more than 2 decades, I've been at the sharp end of reporting crime and security at home and abroad. From the scourge of terrorism to the fight against violent crime and the deepening small boats crisis in the Channel, they're issues you rightly care about, and so do I. As GB News Home and Security Editor, my focus will be on the stories that matter to you.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Andrew, did you always want to be an entrepreneur?
I suppose I did. You know, Mum used to tell me that even as a little kid, I'd kind of swap and exchange transistor radios for a pair of tennis shoes, or, you know, always bartering here and there. I just really enjoyed it.
You started your first mining company, having grown up in Western Australia, rural, outback kind of environment. You started your first mining company in 1994, Anaconda Nickel, and you really started by mining iron ore, then the Fortescue Mining Group, and shipping it to China. Did you know around the turn of the century when you started doing that China would emerge as the world's biggest economy as it now is on quite a few definitions?
Yeah, look, I'll answer that question. I did start Anaconda Nickel, extremely complex, metallurgically difficult, but wonderful, wonderful project, which is now one of the largest nickel and cobalt, you know, battery metals in the world. You know, I've got a few scars to show for that. I got turfed out of that company. It's now someone else's really successful company. So then I went off and started Fortescue. And I started Fortescue because I'd been travelling to and from China for about 33 years. But, you know, just after I left Anaconda, I went back to China and I was completely amazed at their plans, at their appetite to leave a better future, a stronger standard of living than what they had for their kids. And they even had this dream that in their kids' lives, maybe they could even get their kids up to roughly a Western world standard of living. And I thought, these blokes are going to need a hand. I mean, they're not going to do that on their own. They're going to want resources. And so I went back to Australia and started an iron ore company, and, you know, the rest is history.
On most definitions, you're Australia's richest man. You're a multi-billionaire. You want to turn Fortescue, though, into a mining company that produces net zero carbon emissions by 2030. That's way ahead of any of your competitors, and some people would even wonder why a mining titan is interested in net zero. We're going to talk about the how you think Fortescue can get to net zero so quickly, but let's just start, Andrew, with the why.
Okay, so it's a really great question. I started to noodle with hydrogen when I was a kid, like any other kid, kind of amazed that you could take something out of water, something from water you could actually burn. I mean, how does that work? And then when you burnt it, it released a whole heap of energy and it went back to water. And I just thought, oh, mate, this is Harry Potter. I mean, this is too good, you know? And I just started to look at it more and more. And then about 11 years ago, Fortescue started to investigate hydrogen really seriously. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we started biotechnology as a plan B for hydrogen. Hydrogen's got this little issue. It's difficult to store and difficult to transport in bulk, but as ammonia, you can do all of that, really.
You can convert the hydrogen that you create into ammonia, which is a liquid, which then you can move around.
Yeah, so exactly. You just add a bit of nitrogen from the air into the ammonia, and honestly, per cubic metre, you're transporting as much hydrogen as ammonia than you would if it was pure hydrogen. It works super well. And so I thought, okay, so that's our plan B. Plan A might be pure hydrogen one day, but we've got a plan B. Let's go hard. And at the same time, I thought, you know, I've got to dig under this environmental stuff. I've got to really seriously educate myself. I don't want to be this vapid rich bloke with an opinion. I mean, I want to know about it. So I sent myself back to school for 4 years. Tough 4 years, actually, now that I look back on it. It was a PhD in marine ecology. And I thought that, you know, the problems of the oceans would be like overfishing and plastic, and they are. But the elephant in the room was global warming. And what that's doing to oceanic wildlife was just shocking to witness. And I thought, oh, it's not going to be long before it does it to us too. And so I came out of that PhD and I thought, right, we've got to move away from fossil fuels. It's going to wipe us out. I mean, I'm seeing it firsthand with the oceans. It's going to happen here. You know, we've got to get after this hard, but with another fuel. And of course, our old friend, the miracle molecule, came up hard. You know, go back to hydrogen. And that's what we did.
As an entrepreneur, to your fingertips, you've launched more there into the how, but I still want to know why. Everyone can see that ocean levels are rising, but are you absolutely convinced that climate change is happening because of man-made global warming?
I think the worst things about global warming is what you can't see. I mean, you can see those massive bushfires in Australia and California. You can see sea level rising. You can see all of the temperature variation. It's what you can't see, which really worries me. You know, what I've seen is as the oceans started to warm, as the land started to warm, it started to release methane. Now, we release a truckload of methane already with coal and gas. But as the world started to warm, there's greater natural release of methane, which says, and science is all over this now and truly very worried about it, that we're going to reach a tipping point where the world warms to a point where that methane emission just starts to go natural. And methane's really dangerous, right? I mean, that's where you get gas from, methane. Super dangerous, and it's 80 to 90 times more powerful as a global warming agent than carbon, which everyone knows about, but they don't know about methane. The world keeps warming. We hit this tipping point. Science hasn't determined where it is, but we know it's there. And we reach that tipping point, and we hit that point, nothing we can do from that point on will stop the world just warming on its own. Just keep warming. We don't know when that warming will stop accelerating, but we know it's going to accelerate. So I knew from that point, we've got to get out of here. We've got to stop global warming.
So the Andrew Forrest vision is of a world where we generate renewable energy, electricity. We can use that electricity to create hydrogen through electrolysis and other processes, and we can use that hydrogen as an energy source, both turning it into green ammonia. You can drive internal combustion engines with it, and then you can also turn it back into electricity. Is that roughly right, Andrew?
That's roughly right. I mean, what I love about hydrogen is that you just put a couple of electrical wires in here, put enough electricity into those wires, this will split into hydrogen and oxygen from where it is now. You capture that hydrogen, you've got this miracle molecule. It can do everything. It can fire planes, trucks, ships, all sorts of mobility. You can use it to make steel. You can put a bit of nitrogen with it. You've got all the fertilizers you need. With direct current green electricity, you can run about 40–50% of the world. But the rest of it, you need something which is truly mobile and something you can manufacture with, and that's hydrogen.
So you're attending COP26. You spent a lot of 2021 flying around the world, ironically, not on hydrogen fuel planes yet, but you're flying around the world with this advocacy. You want to turn Fortescue Mining Group, a huge mining conglomerate, into a powerhouse of hydrogen energy. Are world leaders listening to you? Do you think global opinion is ready? Because hydrogen's still seen as quite a niche interest, if we're honest, right?
Okay, so let's really establish the most important part of this entire conversation. Green hydrogen. You can get hydrogen, we have for 100 years odd, from fossil fuel. Problem with that, no matter which way you cut it, and all the bull dust which is out there, I'm telling you it's a charade. If you get hydrogen from fossil fuel, you're going to warm the planet quicker. You might feel good because you're burning hydrogen, the same molecule, right? Great.
So let me just explain that. That's using fossil fuels to generate electricity, to do the electrolysis, to create the hydrogen.
Yeah, it's a thing called steam methane reforming. So you burn all the coal, oil and gas, and you do steam methane reforming, you get to hydrogen, or you can do electrolysis, you get hydrogen.
But you want green hydrogen, which is you use renewable energy to create electricity, to do the electrolysis to create the hydrogen.
Yeah, look, there's one path which is going to lead the world into quicksand. Literally, we're going to sink into global warming, and that's hydrogen made from fossil fuel. Any hydrogen made from fossil fuel, it's going to speed up global warming. It's purely marketing. The hydrogen molecule I talk about is the one with the provenance is right, where it comes from. Where it comes from, really important. If it doesn't come from renewable electricity, it's going to compound the problem. So it's got to come from wind. You've got a truckload of that here. Solar, we've got a lot of that in Australia. Any form of renewable energy, geothermal, hydro, but it's got to be renewable, and that'll make all the hydrogen the world will ever need, period. You will not have any more pollution.
See, this is the thing, Andrew, the whole green agenda, a lot of GB News viewers will be thinking, oh, it's all about posh people virtue signalling. They want to take away my van. They want to hit my livelihood. Boris Johnson saying no more new diesel and petrol vans and cars by 2030. Yeah, but the electric cars are really expensive. Rip out your gas boiler. That's going to cost 15, 20 grand, which I haven't got. For a lot of ordinary working men and women, this whole green agenda is just a posh people's game.
Okay, so this is where I want to speak to all those people. On a show like this, go green because there's a buck in it. Go green because your standard of living will sure be higher. We know that for sure. But it'll be cheaper. Rip out your gas boiler, leave your gas boiler there. Just make sure it can take hydrogen gas. If it can take LNG, it's going to take hydrogen gas. Make sure you don't buy the bull dust gas, which is hydrogen gas from fossil fuel. That's just going to make it worse. But by that stage, you're going to have abundant green hydrogen, provided we get the policy settings right now. As far as a posh man's game goes, I got to tell you, this is everyone's game. We're all in this. We're all in this. The world is globally warming for everybody. Now, do we have to suffer for that? My argument is saying, if you aren't going to eat, you aren't going to travel, you aren't going to do this, you're just the fossil fuel's best mate, because actually you will. And what you're saying is, if I really cut down, if I really do nothing, then I'll make a difference. No, how we make a difference is by getting out of fossil fuel, getting out of manufactured products that use it, and getting into totally green products, which we now have in abundance. I'm not talking something which is going to run out. Fossil fuel, it's going to run out. It's getting more expensive. You've seen this here in Britain. I'm talking about something which is infinite. 75% of the universe is made from hydrogen. Most of the world is hydrogen. We're never, ever, ever going to run out of it. Let's get onto it. It's going to be cheaper than oil and gas. But while oil and gas slows us up, oil and gas says, no, look, let's slow up here. Look, it's going to be too expensive for you, or it's a rich man's game, all that rubbish. They're just standing on the hose of what's good for every single person in Britain.
I happen to agree with you that hydrogen is an incredibly interesting energy source, and clearly you've put in a huge amount of work, and you are putting your company on the line here, as well as your reputation. But I put it to you, Andrew Forrest, with all due respect for what you've achieved and what you want to achieve, we're too late. We're not doing hydrogen filling stations around the UK as we head for 2030. We're doing straight electricity filling stations. The infrastructure we're going for is not a hydrogen infrastructure. You're going to have to literally turn around the oil tanker at this point. It seems to me that this hydrogen advocacy lobby is about 10 years too late.
Yeah, so what happened with the battery lobby and the electric car lobby is they lined up with the fossil fuel lobby because it's going to be a lovely big illusion. You can plug in your car, but the smoke comes out of the stack somewhere else. Mightn't be in your garage, but you created the same carbon, right? So it's an illusion, it's a fake. Now, look, I am speaking to leaders all over the world and they're starting to get it. They're starting to get it. Actually, that was a bit of a con. And hydrogen from fossil fuel, that's an even bigger con. When we've got all the green energy the world could ever need, why not just use it? Green electricity, I mean, let's have that straight away. Green ammonia, let's fire all our ships, everything else, our trains on it. Green hydrogen, everything, trucks, cars, planes. So if you've got that solution, it's not too late. It's never too late. It's too late if we don't act. But let's act and let's bring up our standard of living, bring down our cost of living and stop global warming. And that's the future of green hydrogen.
Andrew, you made your business reputation, you made your first fortune in your dealings with China. You're often seen as a bridge between China and the West. You've spoken to many of China's top leaders over many years. President Xi isn't at COP26 yet. China produces more emissions, Andrew, than the whole of the rest of the industrialised world put together. Aren't we wasting our time if China's not in town?
Yeah, China does emit a great deal of carbon, and you speak to Indians, you speak to Chinese, you speak to anyone in the developing world and they say, hey, look, why is the world warming again? Oh, that's right, it was the Western world who got us into this. Don't you want to give us a chance too? My argument to those people is to say, yeah, look, we made a dirty, great big mistake. We're getting through that mistake. Yeah, we're getting shoved down this, oh, let's all go electric even if the grid's dirty, con, or let's just use hydrogen from fossil fuel, con. No, actually, China, India, Great Britain, Australia, North America, we've got so many times more renewable energy than we could ever use. China, I've said really loudly in China, in their newspapers, President Xi should be here. Okay, he thinks he might get a bollocking for this or that if he comes. He's seeing it being really political. What I know though is what China is doing, and I don't know why they're not speaking about this more, because what they're doing is absolutely great. Yes, they're putting in coal-fired power stations, but at the same time, what you don't hear spoken about is they're putting in miles and miles and miles of wind farms. I mean, they stretch over the horizon, right? In this arid, windy country, not used for anything. And they're creating the biggest wind farms in the world. And that's to turn China green. That's to make green hydrogen.
My mum was a housewife, but my dad, well, he started off as an academic and had done foreign languages, and then he served in army intelligence in the Second World War. But then, because of what he saw, strangely in my view, he became a rabbi because he was Jewish. My mother was of Welsh Jewish origin. And he sort of felt that, I mean, actually, if I'd have seen what he'd seen, because he had to interrogate, if you like, German prisoners of war, I think I would have become a complete atheist. But anyway, it made him more religious. And so I was brought up in a Jewish family.
Do you have faith?
I have faith in a lot of things, but I'm not a deeply religious person, though I'm very interested in religion. I live very close to Lichfield Cathedral, and I like the music, I like the tradition. I don't believe in the Trinity, but you know, the great thing about Anglicanism is you can believe in as much or as little as you like. I like spirituality, I suppose. I don't know, actually. I mean, basically, I'm an agnostic. I haven't got a clue whether there's a God or not. But what I do believe is if you're decent to other human beings, if there is a God, that's how he'll judge you, not whether how you worship him.
You were elected in 1992, but tell me about your working life ahead of your election.
Well, while I was at university, I was in broadcasting and I worked on Radio 4 doing various programmes. And I did a teeny bit of television, but I think I must have a face for radio because I did more successfully there. And then I got thrown out of the BBC because I decided to get a consortium together. This was all while I was at university, to apply for a commercial radio station, which we got to serve Sussex, Southern Sound. And we got this licence from the old Independent Broadcasting Authority, as it was known as then. And we couldn't find any decent equipment to go into our radio station. So I went into partnership with a guy I'd met at the BBC, who was an engineer, and we set up a company to make broadcasting equipment and install it at radio stations. And we did that in 48 different countries around the world, and I travelled to most of them. So it was a very, very exciting period for me.
What was the most memorable country you worked in?
Well, that's hard because I was in countries, Australia, the United States, also in Africa. But I think the most exciting one, because of the time that I was there, was the Soviet Union. Because I was there a lot during the transition between it becoming the Soviet Union and then becoming Russia. And I remember once I was with a guy called Boris Viktorovich Nekrasov, who was head of radio studio planning at Radio Moscow. And it was May Day, and we were watching the parade as it was beginning to go or heading into Red Square. And a policeman, a militiaman, came up to us and said, you can't stay on the sidewalk, on the pavement. And Boris said, what do you mean we can't stay on the sidewalk? He says, well, that's my orders, he said. So Boris says, well, can we join them? So we joined them. And I joined. What it was a protest group, which was behind the military parade. And they were flying the Lithuanian, Latvian, and Estonian flags when it was illegal because they were then Soviet socialist republics. And I got chatting to one guy who was, I always remember, was a ginger-haired, blue-eyed guy who said, I said, why are you protesting? And he said, well, I'm Jewish, which I didn't look Jewish to me, but he said, I'm Jewish. And he said, in my internal passport in the Soviet Union, it doesn't say I'm Lithuanian or Russian, it says Ivri, which is Jewish in Russian, as if it's a nationality, when in fact it's a religion. And of course, there's a great difference between nationality and religion, whatever the religion might be. Anyway, we marched into Red Square, and I remember Mikhail Gorbachev being on the top of the Lenin Mausoleum with other members of the Politburo. And suddenly everyone started shouting, Daloi, KGB, Daloi, down with the KGB. And Boris was saying, this is looking ugly. And we're standing there in Red Square with all this happening. And Gorbachev was saying, calm down, and everyone was ignoring him. And Boris was saying, this is incredible. I mean, this would never normally happen. And then we noticed KGB guys pulling cables out of the scanner truck. Now, the scanner is the truck which does all the camera mixing, because all of this was being beamed out throughout the whole Soviet Union, and they were pulling the cables out to try and take it off air. And Tiananmen Square had only happened a short time earlier, and Boris said to me, something terrible might happen now, so just get prepared to drop to the floor. But nothing happened. I remember Gorbachev shrugged and they walked off the podium, and Boris turned to me and said, Michael, I think that's the beginning of the end of the Soviet Union. So I witnessed that little bit of history.
Have you always been a Conservative? Voted Conservative?
Probably, but I must say that if I'd not been an MP, because as you say, I got elected in '92, I might have voted for Tony Blair. I was quite shocked, actually, because I lived in Brighton, which is a very cosmopolitan place. And I got into the House of Commons in '92, and I found the Conservative Party was very different from the Conservative Party that I knew down in Brighton. All retired colonel types, very, very pompous. and quite sort of misogynist, homophobic, xenophobic, and every other phobic you can think of. So I thought at the time that Tony Blair was quite refreshing. But by then I was a Conservative MP, so I thought I'd better vote for myself, otherwise I might lose. So I voted for myself in '97.
Now, when I was doing my research, I noticed that you're often described as a close friend of West Midlands Mayor Andy Street. What does that mean? What's the nature of your relationship?
Well, Andy and I met 31 years ago. I had gone back to a Geordie at Oxford University, and I met him there, a reunion at Oxford. And he was there. He's 13 years younger than me, so he was at Oxford. And we sort of met up and became great friends. And, you know, we've got a place together in Wales because we both like walking. We go on holidays together, and we're, you know, we're very, very close, but we lead separate lives. If we lived together all the time, I think we'd murder each other. So, you know, people sometimes think we're joined at the hip. We're not, but we're, you know, we're very, very close friends, and we know that we can depend on each other. And it's very strange, actually, when I think about it. When I met him, I lived in Brighton and was in broadcasting. And he lived in London and was born in Birmingham, or was brought up in Birmingham anyway, and worked in retail, subsequently to become the chief executive of John Lewis and Waitrose. And now I'm the MP in Lichfield in the West Midlands, and he's now a political guy, the West Midlands mayor. It's extraordinary, actually, how our lives have sort of come together.
Is he your partner?
We're life partners. With something special, but I'm not quite sure what it is. One of those indefinable little things.
What would he say if I asked him if you were his partner?
He would cringe with embarrassment. He would take the microphone off and storm off the set. A bit like John Knott, if you remember, when he was being interviewed about the Falklands War.
Now, you did first dates for charity, so you weren't looking for love on that?
I wasn't looking for love, no. It was... they wanted me to go with a guy. They wanted to pair me... Well, I think they'd assumed I was gay, because people do assume that. I'm not gay, actually. I mean, when I was at... I'm bisexual, I suppose, if you've got to define these things, because when I was at university and after university, I was with women, and sexually I'm far more, or was far more active with women than I ever have been with blokes, if I'm honest. But we probably won't go into detail, because I believe this is going to be broadcast at a family time of day.
I think the world has moved on and everyone recognised that love is love.
Right. Well, anyways, cut a long story short, all the women I was with, they wanted to get married, they wanted babies, they wanted mortgages, they wanted commitment.
You should have met me, Michael. It would have been fine.
We probably would have been, actually. But, you know, I was sort of setting up a radio company, as I said, travelling all around the world and all the rest of it. I didn't want commitment. And, you know, and then I met an American guy, and then subsequently I met Andy. And, you know, we both lead, as I said just now, busy lives. We're there for each other. But it does mean I can get on with being, nowadays, an MP, and he can get on with being West Midlands mayor, and we're not constantly worrying about each other and all the rest of it.
Will you spend Christmas Day together?
We will, actually. We're going to spend Christmas Day with his dad and with his sister, Catherine, who's coming over from Newfoundland. So where we go every year, well, we did go every year before COVID. So it's going to be fun, and we're going to do it at our place in Wales. But often we don't do that. It just happens to be this year we're doing it. It's a good question.
It came to me. So at the time of recording, there's lots of questions. Well, I mean, the government has announced its drugs policy, but at the same time, there's questions about drugs in Parliament. I have to say, I never heard, were witness to it or any of that.
Well, let me tell you something. The only time I've ever heard about it was recently, So I, because of my former background, have many friends in the theatre and the entertainment industry, as they say. Stephen Fry, some years ago, came to dinner with me. And I subsequently read in the book that he'd written that he was so bored with our conversation at one point that he meandered off to the Lord's loo to snort a line of coke.
Because you were boring him, Michael.
Because I think I was boring him at this stage.
Turning people to hard drug use.
It was back in the 1990s. I think nowadays he doesn't. But honestly, I mean, I didn't witness that. And, I smoked the odd spliff when I was at university and also when I was in New York doing the radio stuff in my 30s. But frankly, a gin and tonic has the same effect. I've never gone in for chemicals. I've got an interest in medicine, and the idea of sort of using chemicals which aren't properly purified, you just wonder what on earth you'd be snorting. So cocaine is not my particular thing. Though I do remember, actually, when I first became an MP, the whips thought I was so lively. Apparently they thought I was on drugs, because they were so pompous, as I said earlier, and so dour, and so retired colonel, and I had this long hair and everything, and they couldn't believe that I could be naturally like this. And can I just assure, I'm going to look at a camera, I'm going to assure GB News viewers at the moment, I'm not on drugs, believe me. Sorry about that, Pierre. They'll probably edit that bit out.
How difficult is it, finally, to be a character in Westminster on the green benches? You're not buttoned up, you're a character.
As I think some people might say, I find it only too easy. No, I don't feel inhibited. I think when I first got into the House of Commons, I felt very inhibited. I tried to hold myself back all the time. But, when I sort of won Lichfield with a notional majority, because they changed the boundaries, with about 4,000. And in 1997, when I did decide to vote for myself and not for Tony Blair, I won with a majority of only 238, which I didn't think was that good.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
What we've seen is a massive switch to online. And our mission is to create that new model and disrupt the old. The second principle is around a model that we call the Holy Trinity model, which takes data. That's data about how you and I behave online, what we purchase, what we do. Consented data to get over the privacy hurdle that you and I have consented for use. Use that data together with signals from the big platforms like Google and Facebook and Amazon, and create, produce, and distribute creative that appeals to you or I depending on what I'm doing online. So, for example, I take Netflix as an example, who we work for, and Narcos, or Narcos 3, to be precise. We created 1.6 million different executions depending on what consumers were doing. So if Liam likes Manchester United and you're on
good guess.
Man United's
True Londoner
site,
that I am,
we compare Narcos 3 to a football team or sports. If we see you on a website, WSJ, Wall Street Journal website or whatever, we compare Narcos 3 to a business. We watch what your reaction is. We have 1.6 million different executions, probably using about 50 to 70,000 of them. And depending on how you react, we might feed you, serve you another ad that appeals more than the previous one. So it's continuous improvement. It's rather like election advertising, but without an election date, personalization at scale. So it's highly tailored, whereas what you referred to before, TV, radio, traditional outdoor, is mass.
General scattergun, isn't it?
Yes.
Not directed
Blunderbuss
at all.
versus rifle. Exactly right.
That's
exactly
a good
right.
thought.
Yeah.
You're a big noise, if I may say so, in the world of global advertising.
A little noise.
Obviously, the Saatchis.
My mother thought I was a big noise.
The Saatchis are legendary. Why are the Brits so good at this kind of advertising?
We think we're good.
Creative. We are good, aren't we?
Yes, but
What is it?
I mean, the Americans think they're good too, and the British and the French think they're good, and the Italians
We
do.
punch above our weight, though, in this world, don't we?
Yes-ish, I would say. I don't think we can afford to be complacent. I mean, for example, this morning we went into technology services and we merged. We call it mergers. We don't do earn-outs, which create fragmented verticals. We're trying to build, that's our fourth principle, building a unitary company, one P&L, no cross-charging.
Yeah.
But this morning, the company that we brought in, another 400 people, so we're now up to about 6,500 people, based in Bogota and Cali and Medellin.
Yeah.
So we're and the reason I bring that up is that Latin America is a much I think, appreciated source of creative talent, superb creative talent, particularly in Argentina, I would say, Brazil, Mexico, Colombia as well, but particularly in Argentina. And then on technological talent, huge operations, Mercado Libre, Globan, all examples of South American-based companies. CNIT is a Brazilian company that's going to go public shortly, which will be a competitor to our technology services company. So underestimated. So I think, Liam, yes, we do punch above our weight, but you've got to remember that other parts of the world are coming. China is one, India is another in Asia. The Middle East and Africa will in time. And I would, North America obviously is very powerful, both Canada and the United States. But South America, places like Mexico, like Brazil, like Argentina, like Colombia, have really superb creative talent and superb technological talent.
You talked about very targeted and advertising there, Sir Martin, and targeted in a sort of iterative way. The more
so you don't produce,
the advertisers find out about an individual.
You don't produce the perfect solution, after 3 months of briefing the agency in a TV commercial. You continually change it.
Some people would call this surveillance capitalism. Is there a limit to the extent to which it's morally right, if I may ask you, to target people with adverts based on their private browsing?
Well, we've now got to a stage where most, if not all of this is consented. So you and I, as consumers, have to go through a process which is totally legitimate of A, knowing what we're letting ourselves in for, and B, consenting for that to be the case. So what you've now got is, Google made a decision, actually it's well over a year ago, but it'll take another 2 years to be implemented because they delayed the implementation of nixing, cancelling third-party cookies. These were devices that trawled the net, that got information on you and I, often without our knowledge. I mean, even I, who meant to be somewhat of an expert in this, found
found cases where my data was being used without my knowledge. So we're getting to the stage, not perfect yet, but we will get to the stage where you and I consent, and any other consumer, to the use of our data. We might even be in a position where we're asked whether we want to sell our data. You know, there's a great article in the FT, which I remember a year or so ago, a guy going to work on a bus, and he was sitting on the top deck of the bus, and he sold his information, sold sufficient amount of information to pay for his bus journey or his commuting. And, you know, I say we may well get to that as well, but this has really created a tremendous amount of uncertainty and driven the growth of our data and analytics practice, one of our practices, because clients have first-party data. The definition of first-party data is data that you and I have consented to give Procter & Gamble, Unilever, a bank, or whatever it happens to be, to use, and it's knowledge of the purchases that we've made of their products. And they use that data with our consent to try and work out what are the sort of things that appeal to us at a psychological, emotional, or practical or physical level. And we're developing content that does that. My example of Netflix, whether you're a United supporter or a business follower, is really an attempt to understand you more as a consumer and understand what motivates you in terms of your media habits.
Is there a limit to this process? Doesn't it get a little bit creepy after a while?
Well, I mean, it was creepy.
When you might say something in your kitchen, Alexa picks it up, and suddenly the subject to your conversation, it appears on your laptop, offering you to buy a pair of carpet slippers or something.
And the interesting thing is that both in the West, because of the regulatory pressure that Google and Facebook and Amazon have been put under, and in the East, as President Xi puts pressure on Alibaba and Tencent and TikTok. I mean, both
the Chinese tech
the execution.
Guys.
Actually, somebody who works with me pointed out, you know, that he can control through his Apple phone how much his kids, or kid in this case, plays gaming. You know, you can control that as a parent. In China, it's the state that is controlling it. So the result is the same. You know, a maximum. Maybe if you decide your kid is only going to
the source of authority play, is somewhat different.
And the execution is somewhat different. So no, look, you're right. It did become creepy, but I think now the regulation or regulatory framework is now being put in place where the platforms behave relatively responsibly. I mean, there are still issues that have to be ironed out. And, you know, Google's decision, actually, I think was a really smart one to get rid of third-party cookies, which they took of their own initiative, because I think they saw the regulatory pressure in Australia.
They saw the way the wind was blowing, so...
They were worried about Canada, they were worried about France, and they thought they would preempt it.
Yeah.
So, and the net result of it all is really quite interesting, because when it all sorts through the system, and in 2 or 3 years' time, when third-party cookies are dead and we have a cookieless world, what it means is that the sources of data for personalization at scale, as we just discussed, become two. First-party data, which clients control, consented data that you and I consented to use of, and we know where it's going. And secondly, the signals from the platforms, which, you know, Amazon, Google, Facebook will see
what you
would like, right, etc. But again, you've consented to do it, because Apple have taken the same view. So 2 of the leading companies, one a hardware company and one a platform, have sort of set the standards. GDPR here in Europe, I was on a call.
The General Data Protection Requirement.
Yes. I was on a call with Vestager, who's the commissioner in Brussels, and somebody asked whether that was put in to limit the power of the platform. And she said it wasn't. The original intention of GDPR was not to do that, which I think, I don't think is quite accurate, if I put it that way. I think it was done to do that, but it had the effect, it had the perverse effect, the law of unintended consequences, of limiting the growth and power of the medium-sized platforms and the smaller ones that were intended to compete. So a lot of those American platforms that wanted to come to Europe didn't do so because they said bureaucracy was too great.
And only the really big players could cope with the bureaucracy and the regulation.
The irony was
the regulation actually stymied competition rather than promoting competition.
Exactly. And I think that is a problem that the regulators are going to have to deal with. And I think in the regulatory area, I think the net result of this will be that
the platforms, the big six that I mentioned, Google, Facebook, Amazon, Tencent, Alibaba, TikTok, will not grow through acquisition. You may well see some deconsolidation. In fact, we've already seen that with Ant Financial and Alibaba in China. I don't think they'll get broken up here. If they did get broken up, by the way, it would make the ecosystem even more complex, which is good for us because it means that we can be in a position to advise on more alternatives. But I think it will limit the ability of those big companies to grow through deals, through acquisition.
You're a student of history, Sir Martin. How fair is it to compare these huge tech companies with the huge
oil companies,
the big combinations, if you like, in the Gilded Age of America? It took Theodore Roosevelt to come along with his trust-busting instincts, Republican president. Don't you think sometimes to make capitalism work, we have to kick it in the shins? Don't you think these companies are too big now, too powerful?
I don't, but I have to admit I have a vested interest.
You do?
Vested because we work together with them very closely. I think the pressures that they're under, whether it be regulatory pressures, public opinion, privacy, brand safety, the political
breach of copyright, for instance.
All those.
If you write a book, suddenly it's on Google. Will they take it down? No?
I've said for years, Liam, that these companies are media companies, and as such, they have the same responsibility for the accuracy of their content as media companies. In fact, it would go back, I think probably now it's about 10 years. I used to do an interview at Cannes on the Friday, and my first...
The big media festival
in France. And the first thing I had Nikesh Arora, who was then at Google. I had somebody from Microsoft, I think, from Yahoo, Facebook. And the first question I was trying to do your job. And the first question I asked them is, are you a media company or a tech company? Because they all said that they were tech companies. I said, no, you're not. You're a media company. So I think you're right that when you get to a certain scale, if you get to $1 trillion, which many of these companies have already gone through that 2 trillion and beyond, you have certain responsibilities. With power comes responsibility. And they have done that. Again, this often gets missed in the heat of the argument. But Facebook has taken on, I think last time I checked, about 40,000 people to check editorial content. Do they do enough of it according to some? No, but they're building safety checks.
But come on, that's just a SOP, isn't it? The Clinton era.
Liam, you can't get away with that. A SOP would be a minor department. No, you can't let you get away with that. That's outrageous.
The Clinton era legislation, all the way back to 97, the tech giants were allowed then to say we're platforms, not publishers. So they're not responsible for what goes up on them. They can't libel people. They don't have the same expenses that media companies have.
If you look at the congressional testimony that all the platforms get hauled through on a regular basis, they all indicate that they have a degree of responsibility. Do they go as far as admitting to be wholeheartedly a media company? Maybe not. But are they?
They should be forced to. No, that's the reality.
No, but they have responded. Google, Facebook, and Amazon. That's I think a little bit unfair. The other thing you have to remember, you have to be careful what you wish for, Lynn. If I said to you, out of that 650 billion of media this year, we think something like 55-60% will be digital. Google will probably be somewhere between 220, 230, 240 billion of revenue. Facebook will be about 110, 115, 120, and Amazon will be 35 billion. By the way, it'll be extra 100 billion has gone into the digital media marketplace this year. Of that, what proportion of that would you say came from small and medium-sized businesses?
I'm sure a lot of it does.
60 to 70%.
But it's all on Facebook and Google's terms, and they take a big slug of everything.
Well, but go back again to the pandemic. Sure, governments interceded with furlough money, with support, and that was really important for survival, taxation deferral and the like. But the way that most of the small and medium-sized businesses survived and to some extent prospered in the digital world was how? By using the platforms.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
What's quite interesting when you speak about your dad, you speak about his achievements. Was he a good dad?
He was a terrible father. He was the most terrible father, but he was a great man. So it was this mixture, you know. So he was Irish, he was very charming, he was very internationalist to his bones. He was, you know, very much of the left. He was a great lover of people, particularly a lover of women. He married many, many times and had loads of girlfriends. But he was a terrible father, because of father, you need to have consistency, you know, affection, you need to have some stability. He didn't have any of that.
Do you think it affected your ability to form relationships or your relationships with men when the most significant man in your life let you down in so many ways?
Well, I was really lucky, actually. I met Chris at 22 and I thought, well, he's not obviously going to leave me. So there's no point, you know. And it actually took him about 8 years for him to persuade me that he wasn't going to leave. So we got married when I was 30 and we had a first child when I was 31. And it was like, I just needed that amount of time. And he just sort of stuck it out. Always believed me, always believed in me, and always loved me. And I needed it. And I wouldn't be who I am without him, without a doubt. Not with that sort of dad. You're right.
Now, sort of to go back to that initial question about why some people have the views about you that they do.
Yeah.
In 2014, you resigned from the Shadow Cabinet after sending a tweet which was thought to mock a house with an England flag.
Yeah.
Let's just set the record straight on this.
Yeah,
Everybody interpreted your motivations from that tweet and interpreted snobbery or whatever it was. What did you mean by that tweet?
So, I mean, it was that we were there at the Rochester by-election, from what I can remember. And what I used to do is, before the days of, you know, the other Instagram and so on, but on Twitter, I would quite often take photographs in order to give people an insight into a by-election. So I think I took a picture of a dog with a rosette and the monster raving loony party, and some people had made their own posters. Some kids had made some posters saying "Vote Felix," and they'd done their own drawings. And then I came across this house that was covered in England flags. It didn't just have one. I mean, it had you couldn't see out the windows. So I put that up as well, and I'd put a whole series, and I'd called them "Images from Rochester" or something like that. And I think I went to a parents' evening, and then I was on my way back from that, and my phone just went crazy with all this kind of, like, you know, what's going on, and you know, da da da, and I was thinking, what? And then I was being told you're going to have to resign, and so, and basically I was told, you know, it doesn't really matter what you thought. What matters is what people think you thought, you know, and of course, people did interpret it, you know, and pour maybe some of their own feelings into this, but in the end, I wouldn't want to do anything that would harm the Labour Party. I mean, the Labour Party gave me my house when I was a kid and I was homeless. You know, the Labour Party is a cause. My mum was a Labour councillor. You know, I have been Labour all my life. I'm not going to undermine the Labour Party. People tell me that I have done something to harm the Labour Party. I'll do anything to repair that, because I believe in the Labour Party. I believe the only force that can push our country in the right direction is the Labour Party. That's why I'm in politics.
Thank you for being so open and sharing the real you with me.
That's all right, it's been a pleasure.
You're the first in your family to go to university, so whatever challenges your childhood presented, it didn't stop you going to university. How did you find it?
Never felt like a student. I was always like a townie who was doing a degree and a little bit apprehensive about it. None of my friends really had gone to university. They were all trained as plumbers and electricians and that kind of thing. And it was completely not what I expected, a lot more down to earth, and I studied politics, so you can decide whether that was useful or not.
You say you played hard and you worked hard. You did your schoolwork too. You get into Oxford.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know. But I just was like a fish out of water, like, for most of it, to be honest. Although I did make some really good friends there.
Why were you a fish out of water?
State educated, northern girl doing science. And the work is really, really hard. It's completely different. What I realised was everybody else had a lot of coaching, a lot of extra tuition, a lot of support. There was no teaching, really. It's just like, here's an exercise book, get on with it. Crushed my confidence immediately, which, having gone from being this sort of clever, like, oh, you're out of 2,000 kids in this sixth form college in Manchester, we want you to sort of apply for, I was the only one who got in out of that, to basically being made to feel like I was totally thick, you know, is quite crushing.
Did your parents separate when you were young? Do you know your dad?
They separated when I was 10. My father left home for, strangely, with a woman round the corner. I have to say, it's probably it made things more difficult financially, but it also made me probably appreciate what I've actually had, what I then had in the future, so to speak. So.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at 8 o'clock on Fridays and again at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me. 8 on Fridays, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking windy for many, with plenty of showers. These wintry in the north. Let's take a look at the details. The afternoon's cloud and damp weather in the southwest should be clear by this evening. It will still be blustery with some sharp showers around, but also breaks in the cloud. In the southeast, there should be a good deal of dry weather to end the day, with largely clear skies too. 1 or 2 showers, perhaps. There will still be plenty